Welcome to the DiscoTrek. I'm Alexandra August.
I'm Johnny Kolosinski.
And we are a recap Star Trek Discovery podcast coming at you every Friday with new episodes discussing the previous night's Star Trek Discovery episode.
That's correct. You can find this podcast wherever you're listening now, plus on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Spotify, on Google Play Music, just by searching The DiscoTrek.
You can also find us on social media at The DiscoTrek on Twitter, facebook.com/The DiscoTrek.
Yes, those are all places where we exist.
And if you would like to send us questions, comments, concerns, you can reach us at The DiscoTrek. You can reach us The DiscoTrek at gmail.com. And please also consider leaving us a review.
Yeah, super helpful.
Very helpful for our visibility. So if you like this podcast, you would like us to continue doing it, we need to have a bigger audience to keep doing this. That is a support that we need. So we offer this free entertainment to you in exchange for you just, waving and saying that you like us. If you like
Jonathan Frakes, if you're listening, please do me a favor and just, tweet us out.
Come over for a drink sometime.
Yeah.
We'll make you dinner.
Yeah, I'll order you dinner. It'll be better.
So this week we are discussing, speaking of Jonathan Frakes, episode 2.9, Project Daedalus, which was directed by Jay Frey, who is my new nickname for him.
I'm sure he loves that. 2 takes Frakes, that's old hat by now.
Oh God, of course he's 2 takes Frakes. He's just good at it.
Yeah.
I saw a tweet this week that was like, my 4-year-old just did the Riker sit down. Like naked or like onto the toilet, I think, onto his like potty.
Who hasn't?
Oh my gosh, like now I want kids.
Before we dive into Project Daedalus, quick news on the unnamed Picard series front. One more casting notice. Evan Evagora.
Yeah.
Which is a totally real name that no one made up.
Or so, as much as we know right now. Evan was a model and has been seen in Netflix's Secret City, and will be seen in Sony's upcoming Fantasy Island movie. But this is I
didn't know existed until I saw the show notes.
Same. Until I Googled Evan Evagora. I didn't know it existed either. It's interesting to note that despite everyone poo-pooing the character breakdowns that were released on that hashtag show,
including me.
Yeah, and me too, honestly. I'm pretty skeptical given the context I've received regarding them. It's interesting to note that Evan Evagora, Michelle Hurd, and the other person who was also cast, Santiago, I think, who is Santiago Cabrera, who was Heroes, all of those match up with age ranges we have in this character breakdown. So far, like, Kabar is the youngest of the leads, and he's 17, and supposedly
that holds up.
A Romulan, which holds up with Evan, and then Alana, the female in her mid-40s to mid-50s, struggling with drugs and alcohol, holds up for kind of Michelle Hurd, and then Santiago Cabrera could easily be Dr. Smith, who's a male in his 30s or 40s, and could be another version of the EMH.
Now, what if it is the Romulan kid, and it's Tomalak's kid that we kind of got hinted at?
Who?
Remember Ambassador Tomalak, who there was the fake, when Riker had his fake son, Future Imperfect.
Oh. I don't, you're going to have to catch me up on that, because I know the episode, but I don't know it well enough.
So, we're led to believe that Riker had some crazy brain mad cow disease and forgot the last 20 years.
I sorry, for a minute I was thinking of Picard's son, and that was the Ferengi. Never mind, go on.
And they had I forgot about him too. All sorts of fake sons. And he was led to believe that he had a son.
It made way more sense with Riker.
Yeah. He had a son with Deanna.
Oh, yeah.
And then when he figured out that was fake, he was led to believe that he and this kid were being tortured by Ambassador Tomalak. And then I guess that doesn't actually check out at all, and I'm just spitballing here because it turns out that it was just a mind control-y alien who wanted a dad. So probably not the case. But if it was, you heard it here first.
That would be kind
Interesting
of
that it
cool.
all holds up.
Well, I mean, interesting. I mean, Discovery has been so sort of like almost. It's weird. I feel like they're really good at inserting references to canon really seamlessly, and then other times it just doesn't feel seamless at all. But I'm excited to see that manifested in the Picard series because they're going to have to really stick to TNG DS9 Voyager canon because that show is growing directly out of that. Whereas Discovery, there's a little bit more room to be creative. I say that because I am not as bothered by
the prequel aspect. And
well,
the technology that doesn't exist.
No, not that. Just
100 years later.
No, just the fact that like Michael Burnham is Spock's sister, and there's this Klingon war we didn't know about because this is a time in Star Trek that's been kind of well documented, but not really that well explored. Whereas Picard is coming out of really, I would say, the most intensely laid down Star Trek continuity.
Yeah,
ever.
we have basically 18 years of that's meant to be 18 years of Federation history.
Exactly. Which is, I think, part of what, I mean, obviously that's a huge sticking point with Discovery because part of what makes Star Trek so fun and so cool is that they had, like, as frustrating as Rick Berman and, Brandon Braga and I guess Michael Piller, as frustrating as their sort of reign became towards the end because it really did feel like it got a little stale, I think, which is why Enterprise didn't do as well. But the big amazing thing that did, and in addition to a bunch of other stuff, is that it laid down this huge canon establishment, this huge establishment of continuity that has been honored by 4 series. And that is something that I understand well when Discovery fans really bristle at... or Star Trek fans really bristle at Discovery for some of its canon adjustments. Like, I think it's stupid to, get hung up on them, but I understand the reaction to them because that continuity is really exceptional about Star Trek. There aren't a lot of other shows that have, like Law & Order is maybe the only other show that exists in a continuous universe like that, and they don't reference it constantly.
That and Doctor Who, and Doctor Who makes it a point of this is a show that can change its own history.
Yeah.
Although I guess so did Enterprise. I'm really interested to see what the Picard series looks like visually, because of the fact that Discovery was updated to have a modern look.
Yeah.
And how will they tie in the modern look of Discovery with the retrofuturism of
you mean the modern look of the
TNG
Picard?
to Voyager?
You mean the modern look of the Picard series with the retro?
Yeah. The fact that the Enterprise D was the future of the 80s.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And let's put wood paneling and carpeting everywhere.
It was a pretty sweet desk, though. I mean, I still watch episodes of TNG, and I'm like, oh, she's so pretty. She's so pretty.
Yeah.
I love the Enterprise D. I'm still bitter that they destroyed her in Generations. It was so aggressive.
It's the Enterprise D destruction. It didn't touch me.
Wow. This
I'm
is
a
your
weirdo.
hold the door.
This is my Hodor.
I was brokenhearted. It took me, I don't think I watched Generations for a full decade, and I'm not exaggerating.
I didn't either, but that has nothing to do with the destruction.
I will say, like, catching at a later date, because when Generations came out, I was a huge TNG accolade, and I was like a 13-year-old, and I was like, William Shatner's terrible. He's mean to fans, because I knew nothing. So I didn't give a shit about Captain Kirk and Captain Picard meeting. I was just annoyed that Kirk was even there. But I rewatched it again a couple of years ago, and that is pretty thrilling still to see Picard and Kirk meet like that, because that was, I mean, for 7 years, TNG really like went off and created for itself, like really renewed Star Trek and created something, really fulfilled the vision the original series set out to do and wasn't able to finish because it got canceled. But the original series is so rightfully hallowed that these two things should have been connected. And I didn't love the way Generations was executed, as I think a lot of people would agree with, but it is still pretty fucking cool.
Including the people who were in it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, actually, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
I've not read up on it a lot.
There's just the fact that it was rushed into production, so you've got the mismatch of uniforms and the destruction of the Enterprise that doesn't make sense except for from a, well, we're going to need different sets for filming.
Yeah, because it's a movie. We should take advantage of that.
Yep. I've put it on a couple times with my wife Katie, and I think as far as she knows, it all takes place on a pirate ship. Because I don't think she's made it farther into it than that.
Well, it's so dark, and like legit, Picard looks like he has a fire going in his ready room when he like when Deanna goes and finds him and he learns about Renee and Robert. Like, it's very gothic, which was so opposite of the show. Like the movies, it's interesting that like I love First Contact as much as I do because both it and Generations look so different than the series.
Yeah.
They're huge departures in terms of production design, well, maybe not production design, but lighting.
I'm going to make a controversial statement here and say, even though First Contact is inarguably the best of the Next Generation movies, it is not the best at being the Next Generation.
Agreed. Yeah.
It's really closer to the J.J. Abrams take on Star Trek. It's just it's a pivot in tone and attitude. And then Insurrection, Insurrection would have been
a great episode,
a well-regarded 2-part episode.
A really fun one. I still like Insurrection. It's hard for me to not like Star Trek, but I agree with you. And I think First Contact and Generations are pretty good testaments to these people knowing that we cannot make just an elongated episode of Star Trek. This is a movie. This is a very, very, very special episode. You know, this has to outdo the Best of Both Worlds, because as amazing as the Best of Both Worlds is, it's still the best episode of a syndicated sci-fi show in the 80s and the 90s. Yeah. And it's wonderful and it's groundbreaking, and it did a lot, I think, for television in ways that weren't recognized at the time because of what it was. But at the same time, you can't just put that on the big screen. It doesn't work.
You say it's the best episode of a syndicated sci-fi show in the 80s, but Sub Rosa.
90s.
Yep, there we go.
Season 6.
Completely different decades. Television had changed.
Absolutely.
Speaking of television, how about we talk about the show that this podcast is about?
Probably should get to that.
Yeah. So Project Daedalus is not at all in this episode.
No. So Project Daedalus is the title, which is referenced at the very end, but Johnny actually discovered that there is an actual IRL Project Daedalus. And he sent me information about it, but I don't understand it. So
thank you, Wikipedia. It's not so much a actual. It never launched. But it was a hypothetical, how are we going to get to another star system? And it was essentially, we're going to create a ship that can repair itself and stick a bunch of sensors on it and launch some nuclear reactions behind it to get it moving really fast. Never actually left the ground. It was just a thought experiment. And then there was a follow-up to it that would be actually self-replicating with nanites, or nanotechnology. So I think that's what we're going to see from Project Daedalus, and
that makes
Project
sense.
Daedalus is going to drive the Red Angel.
Yeah. I wonder if she comes out of Project Daedalus. If that's what you're going to. Interesting. Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, naming this episode Project Daedalus would have been like naming whatever episode. I can't recall what episode came before Best of Both Worlds, but naming that one The Borg Attack.
Yeah.
Or Commander Shelby.
Exactly. Who's this?
Yeah. What were your overall thoughts on the episode?
I always like immediately after. I think the only episode that I haven't walked away from being like, that was great, which is my Star Trek fandom taking over, was 2 weeks ago. The one before, if memory serves, where we were like, not good.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it, but I enjoyed this because I thought it was really well executed. I did have some pretty big problems with it. But overall, I could very much tell it was a Frakes directed episode. There's just a joy to his directed episodes that is, he knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
He's a really good director. Like, you can see he has a very specific point of view on Starfleet, on the Federation, and you can see that kind of grow. You can see that imbuing you can see that kind of permeating throughout the episode. Whoever's you can tell whoever's at the helm of this, used to be at the helm of the Enterprise. Used to know that, you can tell he's lived it, which is just from what we're kind of referencing back to what we're talking about, recontinuity. Star Trek fans, I think, really appreciate when new Star Trek feels like it's of old Star Trek. And Frakes manages to do that in really subtle ways. Just by how crew members interact with each other. And I know that he didn't write the episode, but...
You know who did write the episode?
Michelle Paradise.
You know who Michelle Paradise is?
New co-showrunner of Discovery as of season 3.
Starting season 3. Yeah.
Which... I liked a lot of the dialogue this episode. I liked a lot of the relationship work. I thought Spock and Burnham's relationship, that scene in her quarters when they're playing 3D chess, was really fun and just something I was very, very into. Lots to chew on. But the idea that it looks like it's control. It's this AI that eventually becomes the probe aliens in 500 years in the future that try to wipe out all sentient life. That felt really wholly unoriginal to me. It was very, very Battlestar Galactica. With the Final Five Cylons, specifically Cavil. And it also felt really anticlimactic because, and I remember seeing Ocean's 12 years ago and feeling this way. Like Ocean's 11, when you watch it, it's a heist movie and all the clues are there for you to see. And when the solution happens and you look back, you're like, oh, I mean, kind of, sort of. Like, it's slick enough that, there's stuff that you couldn't really figure out. But there's the bones of what they're doing are on the screen. Whereas Ocean's 12, it's just a bunch of, different sequences and different scenes where people are really, kind of doing nefarious stuff. And then you get the solution to it at the end of the episode, at the end of the movie, and there's no way you could have figured it out.
But when you watch it, you see all the pieces moving.
Well, no, I'm saying you could do that with Ocean's 11. With Ocean's 12...
Right, yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Ocean's 12, it's not like that. Ocean's 12, you look back and you're like, oh, there's no way I could have figured this out. There aren't, you didn't tell me anything. You didn't lead me down a primrose path. You just showed me pieces of something and then showed me the whole. And there was no way for me there was no way for me on my own to guess what had happened, to guess the solution. And that's ultimately, I think, really unsatisfying for a mystery. And those are the vibes that I got from this episode, was that, oh, okay, it's Control's AI that's evolving, but all of the information that we needed from that we needed to get to that conclusion was delivered in this episode. So it felt like the first half of the season was building up to the solution of this mystery, kind of. And ultimately it was unsatisfying because none of the knowledge that we've gained, aside from the fact that Arium was infected by this essence, led us to this conclusion. So it just felt very I don't want to say contrived. It was just kind of like, oh, it wasn't as exciting. The solution to this mystery wasn't as exciting. I'm
going to slightly disagree with you here and say that Control, you and I talked about this before the show, and I haven't read the books, but Control is being an AI is a deep cut from beta canon in that
True.
There are Section 31 novels detailing the AI Control, which is running everything behind the scenes.
Such a bad idea. No one in Starfleet apparently has watched any 20th or 21st century movies about post-apocalyptic...
No, they all got lost. They all got lost in World War III.
God damn it.
They're all on New Eden. They were in that church.
The Great Sphere really fell down at its job. Because it
had gotten there yet. The other thing that in that episode we hated, Lights and Shadows.
Thank you.
The conversation between Giorgio and Landry, Captain Leland. Giorgio, Leland, and the four admirals that it turns out weren't the four admirals. Giorgio's response immediately after that to Leland was, in my universe, we read the AIs.
Yeah. Well,
and we didn't have any hints yet.
Well, see, I even thought, like, when I was watching this episode, I was like, you know what, that was kind of like, I felt like that was a really contrived hint. Because they don't really, he barely references the AI in their work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like we're spending this much time with Section 31. I don't need more than a scene to tell me that Giorgio is undermining Leland. But we got 80 of those, and we got nothing introducing us to the idea that Section 31 is taking its orders from a fucking computer.
Okay.
Like, that, to me, was sort of, and then so I thought back to that line, I'm like, okay, you guys were dropping a breadcrumb, but it's just a breadcrumb. What I need from a television show is for you to actually ground this in some behavior. But I feel like, again, I feel like they were trying to avoid the whole Vogue Ash Tyler problem of last season, which is that everybody guessed that twist, which undermined it. And so I think in a rather unsophisticated attempt to make this mystery a little bit more enigmatic, they just gave you no actionable information. And that's a different kind of shitty.
I think that all of my issues with this episode, and overall I enjoyed it too, I have to do with how we got here, not the episode itself.
Okay. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I'll agree with you that we didn't get enough of Section 31 is not just possibly a compromised organization, but it's run by a compromised computer. I think that having more references to that early on, it's not a twist if we just found out about it right now. And I also think that we didn't really earn Ariam's death.
We didn't.
Or at least not to the I'm gonna have my Spock moment of crying on the other side of a door. When we first learned that she was augmented human
45 minutes before, unless you read Memory Alpha. Exactly.
And catch various interviews, which is a shame because I thought that the way they executed all of that itself was excellent.
I wanted to feel the momentousness of her death.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like everyone on the show did. The acting is not in question at all. Like, that was beautifully wrought, but it just didn't land or resonate with me because literally we just met her 45 minutes before.
It wouldn't have been any different, and I think we've brought this up before, if she was an episode of the week character, just like with Ash Tyler and Pike in the shuttlecraft in Light and Stupid.
I like that. That's good. Light and Stupid. Good.
There goes my chance on a writing job at Discovery. Damn it.
They're all listening too. Hi, guys.
Yeah. Javeed Iqbal was our first subscriber.
Oh, Javeed. He's a good friend.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. He's gonna
not at all made up.
Get in touch with Jay Frey.
Yeah. I think that was. I feel like I finally understand how people felt about Battle of the Bastards when I know Joanna Robinson said about that episode, she was like, I really liked it, but the thing that ruined it for me was that Sansa did not tell Jon that the Knights of the Vale could come and help them or would be on their way. There's no reason for her not to say that, and they only made that decision because it made for good television.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with that. A friend of mine who's a Green Beret, I was like, listen, I feel like if you're in the military and you have information that is not necessarily certain, you wouldn't introduce it at that kind of meeting. And he agreed. He was like, no, you wouldn't, because you don't want people thinking about something that might happen. So I personally thought that was fine, and obviously loved the episode, which is not a question. But I understand. I really like that was. I feel very similar to what I'm guessing she felt like, or what a lot of people felt like, was that this was so well executed in so many ways, but there's this one huge structural issue, or a couple of structural issues that weaken it a little bit for me, and one of those was Ariam.
This would have been there would have been no issues at all were this not serialized television.
Good point. Yeah. This would have been a really amazing episode of Black Mirror.
This would have been an amazing episode of Black Mirror. This would have been an amazing episode of Deep Space Nine or Voyager or TNG
Good point.
or Enterprise or the original series.
Mm-hmm.
Anything where we are not
asked to invest or looking to previous episodes for more points of entry to this story.
Right. And I think that there's a possibility that this is one of those points where we're seeing the handoff of showrunner roles. Where we're seeing, because it was just
a few things
2 episodes ago,
and stuffed into an episode.
And in Layman Shadow, that we
You're on Fuego.
That we moved on to. That's all I'm here for, guys. I've got 15 of these on a Google spreadsheet. I'll get through them all. But we're really pieces that would have been in place had there been one steady hand at the helm. Didn't quite get there because there was a lot of going on behind the scenes. And again, this is me talking as someone who's never been in a writer's room. But I do have a premium subscription to the Script Notes podcast.
I think with that, let's get a little bit down and dirty with this one.
Because we have it already.
I know, right? Where are we at right now? Oh, 30 minutes. Cool. Yeah,
let's talk about the episode a bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
It was, I think that one of the reasons we're jumping straight into analysis is the fact that it was the most streamlined episode we've seen in a while.
Oh yeah, expand on that. How so do you mean? I don't know that I disagree, but I'm just curious.
Everything else has been a lot of different players in different spaces. And so like we had last week we had on Discovery and on Talos 4. The week before we had Vulcan and Section 31 and Discovery. So this was just a streamlined, everything happened in the order it happened. Clunk, 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 chronological progression.
Yeah, you're right. Which I feel like was very much the first episode of the Mirror Universe that Frakes directed last season.
Yeah.
That was
I wonder if that's... I wonder if there's... If he chose those episodes, or if that's this is what works for Frakes' style.
I'm sure there's a lot of different factors that go into that, including like schedules and stuff like that. Yeah. So I don't feel comfortable.
Or are we reading too much into it?
Probably.
That's not what we do on this podcast.
Me overthink something?
Nah.
You're crazy. Speaking of Frakes, I was initially the fight sequence between Michael Burnham and Ariam was very reminiscent to me just in terms of style and cinematography to the fight sequence.
Oh, the elevator scene.
Yeah, the elevator scene.
The turbolit scene.
Because we actually got to fucking see it.
Yeah.
I thought about the scene 2 weeks ago in Light and Shadows with Michelle Yeoh and Michael Burnham on board the Section 31 ship, where we couldn't fucking see anything, and we couldn't see Michelle Yeoh be Michelle Yeoh. But this sequence, we really got some beautiful shots of Ariam, and just like how they played with sort of the gravity on the station, and we just got to look at it. And that's like, Star Trek is not known for its fight sequences. I mean, my God, if you look at the original series and TNG,
for its fight sequences,
yeah. Good point. I think my favorite's in Mirror Mirror when Uhura is in sickbay and like literally you can see Nichelle Nichols not get hit, not get touched, and all of a sudden she flings backwards, turns around, yells, and like falls down. Completely unprovoked by anything.
I just love the Kirk two-handed chop, which is this is something that we can do without an idea of what fight choreography is in order to not hurt somebody.
When I was when we were talking when Kroner co-hosted a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about how different captains would have reacted to Ash Tyler, and he was like, listen, your boy Picard would have put him in the brig. My boy James Tiberius Kirk would have karate chopped that motherfucker in the neck. And it was so definitive. I was like, yeah, you're right.
I expected from Frakes a little bit more use of the Steadicam. And we had our standard, we're going to open this episode upside down moment.
I know. I loved the opening shot of the planet with the sun kind of like coming around it.
Yeah. And the shuttlecraft.
Yeah. The
was
weird
great.
like tigerfish shuttlecraft.
Yeah.
Okay.
We camo, sure. Good.
Red and black. Sure. Blends in with space. 100%.
Yep. Good for you, Cornwall.
Yep. Yeah, that was its own batch of stuff. But I loved that opening shot, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, and we're upside down in the shuttle bay for no goddamn reason.
Yeah.
Like, you're not showing me the perspective of the pilot. Like, the shuttle is not upside down. It's just the camera.
Maybe it's just, part of their lease. They have to use it once an episode or it gets taken back.
They have a special camera that goes up and down.
Yeah. Also, apparently, according to Detmer, they're upside down now because they're in space.
That was funny. I really enjoyed the pilot scene where I liked Cornwell this episode because I feel like everybody's really embraced Cornwell as a character, and I think this was Discovery sort of serving that a lot, where she's this great leader, she's really beneficent.
There's a reason she's an admiral.
Yeah, very much. I feel like they really leaned into that this episode, specifically with her being like, you're flying blind, it's just like at the Academy, and she's guiding and she's leadership, and you see why. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a little on the nose, but I didn't mind it.
Yeah. And the, randomization. I'm really picking this apart for an episode I liked. Here's how we're going to randomize things. We're going to use pre-programmed evasive patterns, but we'll let everybody pick one.
Yeah, like... It was funny seeing Ariam try to catch up with that. Like, that was amusing to me, but I was also like, this is vintage Borg. Like, this is literally Q-Who. This is the Borg. This is the Borg's whole brand. They adapt. Mm-hmm. They've adapted. I mean, I was reading tweets from somebody which I don't do anymore, but from somebody who really doesn't like the show, and he attacked, especially last episode, just the lack of originality, which I feel like is just a way to take that. Like, I think that's a take you could have had on, if memory serves, because it delved so deeply back into the cage / the menagerie. But I don't think that's necessarily fair because I really feel like they enhanced the original material.
Yeah.
This week I felt like, okay, you guys are literally just stealing from the Borg. Like, this isn't new. Like, even Ariam was giving me Borg Queen vibes, big time.
Yeah.
Which I'm not mad at. I didn't hate it. It's just like, it does kind of go to I think everyone's fears that Discovery is borrowing a little bit too heavily from its predecessors.
As opposed to referencing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. All that said, we're nitpicking on this, but we both agree that we liked it.
Well, yeah, and because there's a lot to like. Like, the Spock Burnham stuff was really good. Like, I really felt like I've been somebody who's been waiting for an explanation of why Spock in his 50 years as a character on Star Trek has never mentioned a sister. And I didn't think you could explain that to me accurately. Like, I'm willing to, eat whatever Discovery serves, and I'll have my issues with it the way I do with the Klingon War that never happened but did happen, whatever. I was like, okay, listen, even if the explanation for Burnham is a shitty one, we need one. And I'm kind of revising that theorem, just given the fact that I feel like, I don't know that I do need an explanation for it. I think that Star Trek canon is a living, breathing thing and can be adjusted, and they have earned this adjustment, specifically this episode.
It's something we bring up a lot, and I'm never going to have an issue with it because Cybok. What scene I liked?
What?
Spock and Stamets.
Okay, right. Bro TP we deserve. Bro TP we deserve.
That was the Spock's emotional turmoil informing his advice to Stamets.
Well, and also Stamets totally playing Bones McCoy and being like, fucking snap out of it. Yeah. Like, I don't give a, like, I know the thing isn't alive. I'm talking to it anyway. Stop being a bitch. Yeah. We very much got teenage Spock this episode, too.
Yeah, Spock should have had slightly longer hair on one side. Yep. Like, he should have been blowing it out of his eyes.
There should have been no 3D chest, just sort of Spock listening to Nirvana in Burnham's quarters, not talking to her.
I just want to listen to The Cure, man.
Wearing Klingon garb. Yeah. I still love that holodeck doctor episode of Voyager where his son is like rebellious. He's hanging out with Klingons, like the laziest rebellion. Speaking of rebels, though, let's talk about Admiral Pitar and how somebody who was a logic extremist, a known logic extremist, rising to the height of admiral in Starfleet. How do we feel about this?
It depends on what logic extreme... No, never mind, because logic extremism came up in Enterprise, and it was batshit crazy then, too. So,
and it supposedly did it exist 10 years before the events of Enterprise?
Yeah, it did.
Oh, I guess so. Okay, all right.
Oh wait, did it exist before Enterprise? That's
Before
a
the
great
events. Sorry,
question.
the original series. The original series.
Yeah, I mean, well, it did because it existed in Enterprise.
Well, yeah, but you get the feeling that it's like on its way out in Enterprise.
Well, yeah, but so was
Uh,
Nazism.
True. We're gonna
If
talk
we
about
offended anybody with that, by the way, bye.
yeah. Look at what's happening right now.
Yeah,
Sorry, I just shifted out of my show notes screen.
oh,
We could do this off the cuff, folks, but for you, we like to give a little bit of organization.
yeah.
I think the thing that I really like.
Yeah, and we've done such a great job of sticking to these
Totally.
notes.
You guys are on a big Star Trek mushroom trip with us right now.
Yeah,
And just enjoy the ride.
and I'm here for it.
Yep. The thing that I really liked the most about the Spock and Burnham stuff was that I felt like what I was getting to before is that I really felt like it grounded her character as a member of the Spock sort of Sarek family.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was because we got to see them talk about Sarek in this episode, whereas before this is all focused on Amanda's relationship with Spock and Michael and is not really shown a light on Sarek's relationship with both of his children at this point. And I found seeing Spock be like, oh yeah, I piss off my father, he pisses me off. Fucking seasons change, winter is coming, what else is new?
Yeah.
That was such vintage
The
Spock.
moon rises. The
Yeah.
moon sets. The sun rises. I loved the. You tried to take the blame for everything, and it's
yeah.
my fault. And I'm gonna make you hurt just as much as you hurt me because that's the only way that you're gonna figure out.
Yeah, it really like it made it seem like at first I thought I was like, oh, Spock has been really hurt by this, and this is him expressing that pain and trying to victimize her. When he was a bit doing that, but he was also telling the truth. Like,
Yeah.
Spock hasn't spent these last 20 years stuck in that trauma, not developing beyond it. He's found the reasons for it, and he's done his own analysis of it, and he's probably forgiven her, and he's just not in a place right now to like comfort her and forgive her for something that he already knows. He knows why she did it. It's not really a thing to forgive, and it's annoying to him that she's stuck on it because it just shows that she didn't give him the credit, and that she hasn't really, seen past the end of her own nose, that she's stuck in her own hamster wheel when she's accusing him of the same thing.
I don't know that I agree that he's forgiven her. I think that he's moved past it without forgiving her because he thinks forgiveness is irrelevant.
Yeah. And I like the fact that we were getting something Ethan Peck said that was just a quote that I read in an interview of him. He said, Spock on the Enterprise is the end goal. He's not there yet. And I think that is something that the show has pretty masterfully been faithful to. Mm-hmm. That Spock is still kind of working it all out. Hence, like, our references to Teen Spock.
Yeah. And this is Lieutenant Spock.
True. Spock is not like Tuvok in the sense that he hasn't had like another life in Starfleet like this. He's still kind of the age that he looks in Enterprise.
Yeah.
Or in the original series.
Yeah. He's right. He might be older. He might be like in 50s? His 50s or 60s. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's not 120.
No. One thing I did want to mention was like Cornwell being like, look at this video, it's completely unobjectionable, like this video is 100% from the source. And I'm like, girl, in the 21st century we can manipulate video.
Yeah,
this is weak.
Like,
you're or Cornwell's like, no, there's no possible way. Of course there's a fucking possible way. Of course there is.
Right. Yeah, that's that. We didn't need that.
I feel like that should have been framed as like, there's a reason everyone is taking this for gospel truth, but there's this small chance. Or even like, we don't know what Section 31 is capable of because they are operating independently. That's the ultimate sort of Section 31 trump card is that you...
Or this is the reason I believe this is legit. Mm-hmm. It's we pulled this directly from blah blah blah.
Yeah. It just didn't. I feel like Discovery is a little bit falling down on the tech.
Yes, I agree completely. One of my pet peeves happened again this episode, which is they use download when they meant upload.
Oh, really? How so?
Yeah. Just that she was either downloading the data to herself or she was downloading it. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was something along the line. They referred to downloading and uploading both as download.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And generally, almost every time a television show says that they downloaded something, they uploaded it.
I feel like that's next to like the television trope Hall of Fame next to enhance.
Yeah.
Enhance.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, really? So no video is bad enough for you to not be able to see what fucking time it was on the watch of the assailant who killed the dead man.
Not if you're Saru.
Not if you're Saru. God, I really can't.
We really liked this episode, guys.
I did really like it. I mean, it's just one of those problematic things where it's possible. Like, there's a lot of different ways for an episode of television to be good, and for an episode of television to be great and unparalleled, all of those things have to go right.
Mm-hmm.
But for an episode to be good, 60% of them have to go right. And I feel like we got a solid 65% this week that went really, really well. And Discovery does a lot of stuff really well that Star Trek historically hasn't. I mean, bless Star Trek, the acting is occasionally problematic, as are the effects, which Discovery nails every single week. And they also nail like the serialized nature of it and the stakes.
Right.
Like people die like fucking every week on Next Gen. Like a couple of red shirts die every week on DS9. Someone blows out an airlock. Like that doesn't happen on Discovery. So when it does happen, it's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, good. But like, but also conversely, like this was the first episode where we learned about Ariam and how wonderful her story was.
Yeah.
And how sad that was.
And other than the fact that we've seen her more consistently, how is her death different than what we were led to believe was Commander Non's?
Yeah.
We actually heard more from Commander Non than we did from Ariam.
We did.
But Commander Non is an Enterprise person, so she matters less.
True.
I think that the issues with this episode are really just the fact that we didn't get here over 3 or 4 episodes. We got here.
Yeah, same here.
We got here over the course of this episode, and then they executed everything really well.
Yeah, it was just a little bit. I feel like if you're going to have this amount of increased real estate in serialized television, then this should have been something that should have been percolating more than it was for the last couple of episodes. Like, we knew that Ariam was infected with this whatever virus. We knew, like, clearly in this episode it shows that she knows she's losing time because she asks for Tilly to stand next to her, which was so sweet.
Yes.
And she knows that if Tilly's not next to her, she sets these, like, sort of goalposts for herself, these signposts. Be like, okay, if Tilly's not next to me, then something happened. But we don't really, there's not enough time to see her process that or internalize it and really be scared of it. And if this was a Next Gen episode, we would have seen that. We would have seen her, like, how many episodes were there where something's wrong with Data and Data slowly realizes it?
Yeah.
Or somebody realizes it and it's just Data being weird.
Yeah.
And that just was really kind of hurried over. That said, like, Hannah Cheeseman was lovely. The actress, like, oh, she's so good.
Yeah, she did an excellent job with it.
I mean, we want more for a reason. We want more from this because there was just a glimpse of what. But okay, if she's a fucking cybernetically enhanced human, shouldn't she be able to survive in the vacuum of space?
Depends on how she's cybernetically enhanced. I'm a cybernetically enhanced human. I've got a dental ceramics in my skull and in 2 spots in my skull and pins in my arm.
Well, I also liked how we got this sort of indication from Detmer, and it was really simple, where she was like, yeah, cybernetics. Like, there's probably a class of people that are cybernetically enhanced, because this was maybe a stage of like, oh, we can cybernetically enhance people, and maybe
And also a bunch of people got hurt in the war.
Exactly. And this is also maybe something that, like, medical advancements move past.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we don't see it much. And that's a believable reason we don't see it much in TNG, DS9, and Voyager outside of the Borg.
Well, we do a little bit. I mean, we see it in Geordi.
True.
And we see it in the patient, the third or fourth patient that Bashir tried to bang.
They should have their own, like, red shirt classification.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would be, but...
You know the one I'm talking about that couldn't handle gravity?
Sure. Oh, yeah, Melora.
Yeah, Melora.
Well, also, too, I think a lot of people don't understand this. I didn't really realize this about Geordi until, I think just because I didn't watch the episodes as closely on first viewing, but I didn't realize about Geordi that the visor actually inputs data into his brain.
Yeah.
It's not, his eyes don't work. The visor bypasses his eyes and his optical nerves to input data into his brain, which is why it gives him a headache, why he can't wear it, why he doesn't like wearing it all the time. I didn't realize that until I think I read a TNG book. And then when I, my like 15th rewatch of whatever episode, I think it's an original, I think it's like one of the first couple of seasons, he talks about what it is and he takes it off and he's like, yeah, it gives me a headache. But I feel like a lot of people aren't super aware of that. It's just like, oh, he can see through this thing. It's like, no, he can't. He's blind. But it actually inputs data into his brain. But he can
smell through it.
Basically, yeah. Geordi.
Aw. Happy late birthday, LeVar, by the way.
Yeah.
I feel like this episode, our episode, went off on such a tangent simply because it was a good episode.
Mm-hmm. It was dense.
It was dense. But I don't feel like we learned a lot that we didn't already know.
Yeah.
Section 31's bad. There's a computer controlling thing. There's a computer in the future. And Michael can play chess?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Mildly anticlimactic episode of DiscoTrek.
Oh no, we're climactic. We're wonderful.
We're climactic. I'm going to say this was a very Workman episode.
Yeah. I'm still excited to see more of how this concludes.
Oh no, I meant us.
Oh, Workman-like. Reminds me of the a really obscure SNL reference. It's a Phil Hartman sketch where he's the guy who takes over for Yul Brynner in The King and I. And everybody's like, oh, how is this going for you? Like, everyone's comparing you to Yul Brynner. Like, how do you feel about you and Yul Brynner? And he's like, oh no, I'm getting great reviews. Workman-like is a word that's been bandied around. And then, like, at some point, the actor's wife comes on and she's like, listen, if you guys want Yul Brynner, just dig him up. Just dig him up.
You know, really there's a universe where Phil Hartman played the EMH Mark II.
Oh, God, yes. You're right. Oh. Dude, if Andy Dick shows up on this show, shows up in the Picard series as like a realistically aged EMH, I will believe in God again, and my God will be Gene Roddenberry.
I would be okay with that.
I would be alright with that too.
I'd be more okay with that than Andy Dick showing up on Lower Decks.
Oh, that's a tough decision. I don't know about that, but I'm with you.
All right.
I'm looking at my I'm looking at my notes and I have in all caps, that is a dude cut in half by a door. That was gruesome.
Yeah. My wife Katie, by the way, immediately called the Admiral's dead.
Oh, nice. I did not call that at all. I was like, logic extremist cunt.
Immediately. Like as soon as they got on the ship, or on the station. The station, by the way, I think we both agreed was very reminiscent of First Contact.
Yeah. I actually tweeted that just them wandering through reminded me a lot of Picard and Lily kind of wandering through the Enterprise on the Borg decks after they get back on board. Mm-hmm. Very much so. I also like that Michael, like, quote, beat the computer when she sticks Arium in the other room. And then also she starts beating at the door with her phaser. I'm like, maybe shoot it?
Yeah.
You can vaporize stuff. I seen you do it.
That's a Type 3 phaser. We know because we were told.
Yep.
There's 3 types.
Yep. I did love that Non is the person who blows Arium out the airlock. I thought that was great. I loved how, because Burnham wasn't going to do it. And one thing I love about
didn't have to deal with, no, this isn't a knock on Burnham, but Non doing it isn't going to have the same 2 episodes of Crisis that one of the leads doing it would.
Yeah. Yeah. She's very much about the job, and she just got fucking attacked by this person. Yeah. She's like, no, done, decision made.
And she's the chief of security. Is this the most effective chief of security we've ever seen on Star Trek?
Right?
That isn't Odo?
Oh my god, you're completely right. That's so funny. Yeah, my last note is Non did it. I really like, too, I put in the show notes as well, this was very reminiscent to me of Thine Own Self. That episode where Deanna goes through the command training program, and eventually she keeps failing.
She has to kill Geordi.
Yeah, and she eventually realizes, like, Riker's, like, not so nice to her. She's like, I'm failing. And he's like, well, there's a reason for that. Be better. Yeah. She's like, but you're my ex-boyfriend. And he's like, I'm not your friend right now. And the decision she has to make is that he tells her, he's like, your first responsibility is to the ship. And eventually that makes her realize that she has to send in this particular problem, she has to send holographic Geordi to fix it, knowing that he's going to die. Mm-hmm. And holographic Geordi does it. And it's very sad.
Yeah, I didn't think about that one.
I don't know that it's like, I think just that moment reminded me of it. I don't know that the episode is particularly reflective of it, but just knowing that those kinds of decisions, as much as Next Gen really address the idealism and how often things work out in Starfleet, and the Federation, they were not afraid to shy away from the fact that it takes a lot of tough decisions to get there. And this isn't utopia.
Yeah.
Yet. Like, Earth is utopia, Earth is paradise, but out here on the fringes of civilization, you have to make tough decisions. And, despite the fact that Discovery is a much darker show and deals more directly with those moments, it's not to say that DS9 and TNG and Voyager, I mean, none of those shows shied away from that too much, especially DS9.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you feel about Ash Tyler in this episode?
It's great. I loved it every second. Awesome. My favorite Ash Tyler episode. I shouldn't say that. I'm actually I'm back in the Ash Tyler corner of liking him.
That's because you haven't seen him this week.
No, I mean I like the function that he's playing now in the last couple of episodes. I think,
but he didn't get to play it this episode. This is I'm
he
sorry.
Been on this episode.
I'm coming off as such a naysayer, but it again strikes me as not a serialized episode, because we have this character who's going to be a little bit more informed, potentially, of what's going on.
And he's not there.
And he's grounded.
Yeah. And no one thinks, like, oh, if they're faking video, maybe they faked these other things, and maybe it wasn't Ash Tyler. And
yeah. And we just got the Burnham Pike conversation, and that was it. But I like this episode.
Yeah, I did too.
He's an honorable man.
What?
And Brutus is an honorable man.
What? Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to. Oh, okay. Cata Scott call out.
Oh, right.
Yep, in Arium Summary. If you are curious, folks, because I think everybody who's watched Discovery has watched some Star Trek. I don't know that everyone has watched all of Voyager or remember it as much as maybe I do. But the game in one of Arium's memories that they're playing, that Detmer's like, I'm not going to play you, Tilly, and I'm not going to play you because you've memorized all the different like permutations of stuff. Is Cata Scott, and Cata Scott is a game that is first mentioned, that we've first seen in the Star Trek universe on Voyager. It's a game that Naomi Wildman plays with
It's like Connect 4 meets Go.
Basically, yeah. So that was kind of neat. And I was like, yeah, I'm looking for it, and I don't believe there's been a direct reference to Star Trek Voyager, just because it's, it's hard. It happened in the future. There hasn't been a direct reference to Voyager.
Yes, there has.
How so?
Very first scene, T'Kuvma.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the Messiah that they thought?
That cultist
Torres's
from
kid.
Yeah,
that was called was the Kuvama.
Oh my gosh! Oh,
and then they also had the Ship of the Dead.
I'm a dope. Sorry
We did
about
episodes
that.
on this, dude.
I don't really care about B'Elanna Torres or the Klingon. Dude, you don't understand. Like, for the last 4 seasons of Voyager, I literally was watching every episode for scenes that Janeway and Chakotay were in. I know that show really well, but my focus was definitely not on B'Elanna Torres.
Being a teenager is weird.
It is weird. I revisited that. But let's see. I think something too, like, I loved that moment with, it was a little bit melodramatic, but when Cornwell was like, the reason you set out the war was on purpose. We wanted the best of Starfleet to survive, when she's talking to Pike.
Mm-hmm. Aw, yeah, but poor Bryce, poor Owo, poor Detmer.
Yeah, good point.
Maybe not poor Arium.
Michael Brown was like, dude, I was already a convict. Sorry, y'all.
Yeah.
I think that was an indication to me too, and I've thought a lot about Section 31 the past couple of weeks, and I think we talked about this. Like, it really has forced me to acknowledge, as much as I like Section 31, it is very problematic when it comes to Gene's original vision of the Federation as an organization that had evolved beyond those kinds of values. Mm-hmm. And those kinds of operations. And for Ira Stephen Bear to insert that in DS9, a lot of people were like, no, you're betraying the entire premise. The Federation is defined by its lack of things like Section 31. And like I said, as much as I like them, I don't necessarily disagree with that fact. At the same time, what I've been coming to recently is that Section 31 has never it's never been established Section 31 is like a shadow government that is controlling the Federation.
It could have just been Sloane.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I don't think it was just Sloane, but, like, that's the funny part. Like, it really could have just been this one dude who was highly skilled and managed to, like, sell his talents to admirals and be like, yeah, I can totally take care of this. And then did. But... Or
didn't even sell his skills to admirals. We didn't know that he actually got anything done.
Well, there was that Romulan assassination and then
that wasn't him.
Somebody. Well, no, but that was him. That was Sloane helping the Federation to install a Romulan. This is Inter Arma Einem Sealant Legis, where they install a Section 31 agent in the Romulan High Council at the expense of Admiral Kretak. Right. So
I was thinking in the Pale Moonlight.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's like I think just by virtue of the fact they couldn't cast a bunch of people to be part of Section 31, it's just William Sadler and Sloane. But I think there's room to say, okay, Section 31 is an active force, but maybe their opinion of themselves and their influence is a little bit inflated, and they don't necessarily have as much influence as they like to tell people, or just that they don't need to be active very often because the Federation works more often than not.
Yeah, because things worked out.
Yeah, and it's when it doesn't, Section 31 steps in, and they're not always right either. As DS9 teaches us, like, they get corrupted by their own power and eventually try to use genocide to get rid of the Dominion. And they did that 3 years before by injecting Odo with this virus preemptively. Like, they're a really dastardly organization in DS9. And I don't think we're not meant to think that they are an integral part of the Federation. We're meant to think that they thought they were. Right.
Yeah. Right now they're the ends justify the means, but this might be the first time, or they might just now be becoming wicked for the first time.
Yeah. I've been kind of harping on the fact that it's Georgiou's, or just I like the idea that it's Georgiou's influence that eventually turns them into the Section 31 we meet in DS9, but...
Except for they killed Burnham's parents.
Yeah. Well, I feel like they could have, like, colored outside the lines a little bit before Georgiou, but when Georgiou comes around, it's like that's when coloring outside the lines becomes rule of law, and that's what they do. But it seems like it's more attributed to control, and the idea, which is more in line with the idea of Section 31, is that they became so committed to their own importance, and they became so committed to the idea that they knew what was best for everyone, that they believed holding back and like operating on values wasn't necessary. They just, that the ends truly do justify the means. And once you accept that, there's really no telling where you can go with it. There are no limits on where you can go with it. And I feel like we're seeing that kind of start now.
Speaking of starts, I have a question.
Okay.
Is this the first time chronologically that we've learned that the Federation is really, really bad at building artificial intelligences?
Maybe.
Because they suck at it. Like, they're garbage. If not a Soong-type android, it's crap.
It really is not great. Like, I want to know how much of Arium was actually human.
Yeah. I wonder if we're going to meet Richard Daystrom. I kind of, if
That'd
we were
be
going to
cool.
keep Arium for a while, I thought we were going to see some Daystrom.
Actually, there was an interesting article that I was chewing over with a friend of mine at Screen Rant, and we haven't figured out a way to like get an angle on it, but there's a fair, because so much of Star Trek happens after Discovery, there's not like, it's like, oh, how do you reference TNG directly? How do you reference DS9 and Voyager? Like, you have to kind of work for it, because you're having to create canon that exists. You're having to create canon based on what came before, and that's
that can be problematic.
Very, very tricky, as we've seen.
As we see in Enterprise, because sometimes they do it well,
and sometimes they don't.
and sometimes they
sure don't.
They introduce the Borg and Ferengi for some reason.
Yeah. But we came up with we were thinking about a list of people that could kind of more seamlessly be introduced to Discovery and not fuck with canon in the future. And Ben Sisko is a prime candidate.
Oh yeah.
Which was, I didn't think of that. John Orquilla did. He's at Back of the Head on Twitter, guys, if you're listening. He's awesome. But then I was also like, the initial reason I even thought of this was that a friend of mine, Eliza Pearl, tweeted that she's like, hey, can we see Guinan on Discovery? And it occurred to me like, oh,
yeah,
kinda. I have to check back as to Generations is kind of problematic, because in TNG, Guinan, her history is that she's been bopping around for a while after the Borg, presumably after the Borg destroyed her planet. That's when
she was bopping around in the 18th century.
Well,
too.
that's what I'm saying. So she's bopping around in the 18th century, and I assumed that she left her planet after the Borg destroyed it. And so when she's bopping around in the 19th century, that's post-Borg, when Generations would have you believe that the Borg destroyed her planet and she immediately went into the Nexus, which would have happened in the 23rd century. Makes sense? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it kind of conflicts with that. But I think it could very easily be that like the El-Orians were still in existence and hadn't been hit by the Borg in the 19th century, because she makes that reference to her father. She's like, if you want me to, if you're from my father and you want me to go back, like I'm not nearly done listening to everything. So now that I'm saying this, I feel like maybe in Time's Arrow, her home had not been destroyed yet by the Borg. I love her and Picard's relationship. Can we just like shout it out?
Are we going to get Whoopi back?
Oh my god, please. I feel like she'd totally be up for it.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so like Whoopi Goldberg, so like, oh shit. Damn it. The thread damn. I'm looking for the thread in Slack and it's gone because we don't have, my history's gone. But, I know if like the Traveler was one that we could see that would be kind of easily Q could be. I don't really want it to be, because I don't want it either. I would like a new Q.
Fit the tone.
He doesn't fit the tone. In Mud he kind of does. I'd be interested in a Q where the only people who know it's Q are the audience at the very end. But I don't really see how that happens. And I like,
maybe it's Junior.
Junior? Oh, Q Junior?
Yeah,
maybe. I'd be down for Susie Plaxton too, just in any capacity.
Susie Plaxton?
Yeah, she's the female Q, and she played Kalar and Dr. Solar as well.
Okay.
This would complete her. This would give her another notch in her Star Trek belt.
How long do the Andorians live?
Oh.
Could we see Shran?
Oh.
It didn't give us more Jeffrey Combs.
I don't know. Ah, that's right. Oh, man. Pour one out for Wayoon.
And then pour one out for Wayoon. Then pour one out for Wayoon.
Pour one out for Wayoon.
Not 6. Then pour one out for Wayoon.
Yeah, I would say I would like in season 3 for Discovery to really move away from the TOS stuff and to get into its own stuff. And then maybe season 4 or 5, like, have some kind of time travel. Wouldn't it be, oh my God, wouldn't it be great if the Picard series involved time travel and there was a fucking crossover episode? No, that would be great because it would be something that wouldn't have happened on TNG. It would happen, like, afterward, so it makes sense with canon. It would have to be, it'd be really, really hard to execute well. Very hard. Very difficult. But it'd be super fucking cool if it happened. You know you want it.
I don't think it could live up to expectations.
I'm with you. I'm worried about the Picard series for that reason. But you gotta dream big, man. Shoot for the moon and the stars.
We just get a Trials and Tribulations type episode.
Oh my God, please.
But it's just Picard going back to the episode from last week on Discovery. What I don't want to happen is These Are the Voyages, the finale of Enterprise, where they throw back to they throw back to Next Generation and really weaken what should be an Enterprise episode.
This is why I didn't watch Enterprise. I was trying to avoid stuff like, just kidding. I just don't remember that episode that well.
I watched it once. It's got freaks in it.
It does. Oh, I need to watch it again. Oh, terrible. I really do need to just sit through and watch Enterprise.
Directed it.
It's possible.
I don't think so, though.
An actor that I worked with in improv actually worked with Frakes a couple of times, and he was the one. He told me, he was like, dude, he's a great actor. He is an even better director. He is genius, and I can appreciate that just watching his work. But hearing somebody who worked with him
feels that way.
What?
Frakes feels that way.
Yeah, I think
it's unlikely that we're going to see much Riker in the Picard series because Frakes thinks he's a lot better director.
And I'm honestly, like, I'm very interested in Picard, who's cut himself off from all of his previous attachments. I'm interested, like, I know people were really bucking against the idea that it's a much changed Picard. I want that. I want to see a Picard that's disillusioned and bitter because
maybe Picard was the ambassador to Romulus.
That makes sense.
And then...
Well, I think that apparently this is all based off of, like, what happened in... Not in... What's the last?
Nemesis.
Yeah, what's happened in Nemesis. So I don't think he could be the ambassador to Romulus because Romulus is destroyed in that.
Romulus isn't destroyed in Nemesis. It's destroyed in Star Trek 9. 2009.
I don't think so.
I don't think
that's the Kelvin universe that it's destroyed in 2009, isn't it?
What?
Isn't it in the Kelvin universe that it's...
Well, no, it's destroyed first. Nero destroys Romulus, or Romulus is destroyed, and then Nero, that's what makes Nero go back.
Oh my God, you guys. I'm so sorry. I'm here as a Star Trek podcaster. What? Sorry.
To be fair, Nemesis is also problematic.
Well, that's still,
my first thought when I was watching Star Trek 2009 was, I don't remember that happening, but I'm not completely sure. So,
well, I mean, the Romulan High Council is murdered in the beginning of Nemesis, so that's kind of just, I think,
it fits. It makes it makes sense that it would. My first thought was that I don't remember that happening, but it probably did, and I forgot.
Yeah, I should probably rewatch Nemesis. I don't know. All of the Star Trek Next Generation movies are lacking for me because we've yet to see the vertical flying 3 nacelle Enterprise D that appeared in All Good Things, and I'm still bitter about that because Enterprise E is fine. It ain't no 3 nacelles vertical flying Enterprise D.
No,
with a cloak.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good tying off point, don't you?
Loved those uniforms.
Yeah.
All right, and from there we can go.
Thank you so much, folks, for tuning in and hanging out with us every week. We appreciate every last one of you.
Yeah.
Especially you, Rocket Spot, who's left us wonderful reviews on iTunes for both Got Thrones and the DiscoTrek.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Hats off.
Also, if you're looking for answered questions, next week is called The Red Angel. What that probably means is that the last 2 words of the episode are going to be The Red Angel.
Who do you think the Red Angel is, Johnny?
I don't know. Andy Dick?
I think it's Dr. Crusher's hair. I think it's her indomitable 80s hair.
Going back to stop Beverly from banging a ghost.
Stop also, from wearing any of her night clothes that she wears. Because
a thing we didn't cover. Apparently, Michael's super important to the future. Anyway, catch you next week.
Okay. It's all about you, which kind of steps on what Spock was saying about, like, hey, it's not all about you. Meh.
We'll learn more about that next week.
Meh. Thank you, folks. We're going to end this by saying, if you could just tell one single person about this podcast that you heard this week, one single person that you know likes Star Trek Discovery and maybe isn't listening to a podcast about it, or somebody who's listening to just a crap Star Trek podcast that they complain about every week.
Or somebody who talks about how they listen to 16 Star Trek podcasts and obviously has time for one more.
If you know that person in your life, if you could just tell that person about our show, we would be so appreciative. We appreciate you sharing episodes of the show and stuff about us online, on Twitter and on social media. But it goes
on Facebook when it's up.
On Instagram, never.
When it's up.
So if you get to a point, so if you wouldn't mind, it goes a long way, much further towards getting us a dedicated listenership if you just tell one person about it. And I'll say this again, I stole this idea from a great country music podcast called Cocaine and Rhinestones, which you should totally listen to. You don't need to be interested in country music to listen to it. I wasn't.
Are you just using your one person as me every week?
I don't know. Honestly, I actually tweeted about how that podcast had been around for a year, and I was very angry that nobody had told me about it for a year. And then literally I have told no one about Cocaine and Rhinestones.
You've told me?
I have told you. And our audience. But
yeah, you've told me weekly for the past 4 weeks, and I think that counts because I still haven't listened.
Don't. Sorry, Tyler Mahenko. I know you're listening. My order to attack came directly from Starfleet Command. Sure, Jan. Whatever. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. We will be back next week with our... we'll be back next week with our discussion of, as Johnny said...
The Red Angel.
The Red Angel. And we fucking better find out who's in that goddamn suit. If we don't, I will ride it.
I will bet you $20 we do not.
I don't even want to take that back because I feel like you're right.
All right. Later, folks. Catch you next week.
Bye-bye.